Welcome to Orange Weekly, presented by Krause Health. 6 feet away from Chris Carlson, I'm Brent. Coming up, Syracuse head coach Dino Babers looks back on week one, and hopefully the Orange make some big improvements into week two. And Chris and I will preview Syracuse's matchup, another noon kickoff against the Pittsburgh Panthers. A lot of these games have been close as of late. How will things turn out this year? And Chris, the old adage in football is you make your biggest improvement from week one to week two, and that's certainly something Syracuse is hoping to do. But before we move on to that game with Pittsburgh, I think lost opportunity is how you describe Syracuse's loss to North Carolina last week.
Yeah, I think it's no surprise to anybody that North Carolina is like a better team than Syracuse. We all sort of knew that coming into the season. I think the second half is probably the true talent level. But Syracuse had a chance to really take control of the game early. North Carolina turned the ball over. They had special teams miscues. They were really trying to hand Syracuse this edge. And then who knows if Syracuse can kind of nurse that edge to the finish line. But instead they found themselves kind of in an even game, and North Carolina's kind of talent advantage just won out in the second half.
A drop touchdown in the end zone, a punt return for a touchdown called back, a rare miss by Andre Schmidt, one of the best field goal kickers in the country. You go into the fourth quarter, now mind you, Carolina scored on, I think, the first play of the fourth quarter, but you go into the fourth quarter down, 3 points at that point of the game. You got to feel confident that you're in this thing. The defense simply ran out of gas, Chris, but that was really impressive to me how the defense showed. It's ironic. You would think that with an offensive coordinator in Sterling Gilbert, who's kind of in lockstep with Dino Babers, and a lot of starters back, that they'd be the ones streamlined, and the defense, which got a complete remodel in the offseason, would be the ones kind of trying to find themselves on the field. It was actually the opposite. The defense, despite the 31 points put up by the Tar Heels, looked pretty good.
Yeah, I guess I'm not overly surprised that the offense struggled, just because their spring was cut short. The players weren't allowed to be on campus in the summer. They're working out in pods. It was just going to be hard for that unit to get better, and they were so bad last year. Like where did they have the time to improve? But the fact that the defense was so good after dealing with the same issues, and it's an entirely new system. It's a testament to how hard those guys work trying to get a handle on it through those Zoom calls. And it's a testament, I think, to the talent of the defensive backs, who just did an incredible job blanketing North Carolina in the first half. North Carolina eventually kind of wore them out in the second half, and they started throwing those little swing passes to the running backs, working on the linebackers rather than the defensive backs. That's an adjustment North Carolina made. I think it's probably an adjustment that we'll see teams make moving forward. You just can't pick on Syracuse's defensive backs. They're really good.
About a month ago, Chris, Syracuse was handed an entirely new schedule, which put North Carolina and Pittsburgh back-to-back. That's two ranked teams Syracuse will have to face back-to-back. So we'll preview the Panthers coming up here shortly. But looking at it from a Syracuse angle, what do you think is the biggest improvement Syracuse will have to make from week one to week two if they expect to be in this one 20-point underdogs once again?
The best chance they have is for Tommy DeVito and his wide receivers to kind of get on the same page and hit some of the deep balls. There were a couple that were open against North Carolina that if they connected, again, missed opportunity. Those are potential touchdowns. I think it's probably pretty clear that Syracuse is not the better team. Pittsburgh is a better team than Syracuse, but you get some of those big plays, those momentum-changing plays, and that's how you get an upset to happen. So I think Tommy DeVito is going to have to hit, a couple deep balls. I'd love to say that the offensive line should improve, but I just don't know where. It takes time, and you've got a fullback as the guard, and he didn't really stand out as bad.
Exactly. He actually did a pretty decent job, but can he sustain that is the question.
And also, if he's not standing out as worse than the others, does that say more about him, or does that say more about the others, or a combination of the two? Right? It's probably not good that he's not the worst one on the line.
Exactly. It's 2020, Chris. Everything's the opposite, right? I have a simple request for week one to week two. Everything you brought up, I think, is more long-term, and you're not going to solve in 1 week. Here's something you can solve in 1 week. Throw the ball to the darn tight end. Aaron Hackett and Luke Benson combined for 9 touchdowns last year, and when you got a quarterback who's trying to get into rhythm and is certainly still under duress, use the tight ends in the flat, in the red zone. They've got to be targeted more than one time. Well, Pittsburgh is next for the Orange, but before we take a step forward to that game, Here's Syracuse head coach Dino Babers on what he thought about his Week 1 performance against North Carolina. It's time for Syracuse Soundbites.
Well, first of all, we need to have everybody look at themselves honestly with the corrections that's going on. Most football teams, they really change the way they look from their first game to the second. You know, when you get to play somebody, you get a chance to look at yourself on tape, not someone else, and be able to openly receive the information that you need to make yourself better. There's normally a drastic jump from Week 1 to Week 2.
Chris, Pittsburgh beat Austin Peay 55-0 last week. It was 42-0 at halftime, and both teams decided, hey, let's play 10-minute quarters in the second half and get home for dinner here. So Pitt didn't exactly have a big challenge last week where Syracuse played an ACC opponent. I think that's a big advantage for the Panthers coming into this game.
Just the fact that they were able to go out there and win and just not show much. They've probably been game planning for Syracuse for 2 weeks and just kind of figured that they could roll over Austin Peay. And they looked really good. And a lot of people see them as kind of a dark horse team to be that number 2 contender behind Clemson this year. And nothing happened in the first week to make you think that that's not possible.
70 players on the field for Pat Narduzzi's squad against Austin Peay. And there's some familiar names on this team, Chris, notably Kenny Pickett, just one of those quarterbacks like Nate Peterman and others in the past that feel like they've been there forever at Pittsburgh. And that's what I'm curious about with that defense. Sam Howell's a very talented quarterback for North Carolina, but is a young quarterback. Kenny Pickett's been around the block a little bit. Their offensive coordinator, Mark Whipple, is one of the smartest minds in his position in the ACC, maybe even in the country. So I think that 3-3-5 defense is not going to fool Pittsburgh maybe as much as it did to Carolina at times a week ago.
Yeah, talking to Sam Howell afterwards, he mentioned, he felt he forced the ball deep and he didn't take the short plays. And that is the type of thing that the Pittsburgh quarterbacks, the Kenny Pickett's and the Nate Petermans of the world kind of thrive on. They're not deep ball guys. They take what the defense gives you. And that is, given how good Syracuse's secondary is, that's how you have to approach it. You have to hit the tight ends, you have to hit the running backs coming out of the backfield, and you have to kind of slowly churn out yardage. I think Pittsburgh's, a veteran quarterback is better equipped to do that.
Pittsburgh is not that traditional team that they're physical, certainly, and they're going to hit you, but this is not Craig Ironhead Hayward back in the day, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. They like to throw the football, and they're going to challenge that 3-3-5 defense. And Chris, one thing I'm looking forward to seeing in this game, who's the better safety? Because if Andre Sisco wasn't winning preseason awards in the ACC and nationally, it was Paris Ford from Pittsburgh who kind of swooped in and got some of those awards. So keep an eye on those two in their respective backfields. And we'll see if Syracuse can bounce back against the Panthers after a season-opening loss to the Tar Heels. I don't think so, Chris. I think Pittsburgh's going to do the opposite of what North Carolina did. I think they're going to jump on Syracuse and make the Orange try and come back in this one. But I've got Pittsburgh winning 37-20.
Yeah, Pittsburgh's defense is significantly better than North Carolina. Syracuse struggled to move the ball against North Carolina. I've got Pittsburgh by a lot, too. I've got it more like 31-13, 31-10. I don't think Syracuse can score much.
Predictions sure to go wrong. At least Syracuse fans hope, right? Well, that is Orange Weekly, presented by Krause Health. Thanks to Chris Carlson. I'm Brent Axe. We'll talk to you next time.